Poor waitress confesses crush on customer via receipt. She didn't know he's a millionaire CEO. The worn-out sign above Harvey's diner flickered under the rain-soaked street lamp. Linda Park, an overworked waitress with dreams bigger than her tiny apartment, had no idea this shift would change her life forever. It all started when a handsome stranger in a crisp suit slid into booth number 5. A whirlwind of curiosity tugged at Linda's heart, and she found herself drawn to his gentle smile. Encouraged by a surge of boldness she didn't know she had, she did the unthinkable, poured her secret feelings onto his receipt. Little did Linda know that simple confession would unravel into a tale of unimaginable twists and heartbreak and hope. Linda Park's life had once been painted in vivid colors. Family dinners under glowing lanterns at her parents' modest home in Tacoma, lazy afternoons reading romance novels in the local library, and the hope of one day escaping the cycles of poverty that haunted her upbringing. Now at 25, she felt those colors draining to gray. Inside Harvey's diner, she was confined by the squeaky vinyl booths, the clatter of chipped plates, and the endless stream of tired customers who never tipped quite enough. Her routine was painfully predictable. She'd be up before sunrise, fumble through the cramped kitchen of her threadbare studio apartment, and catch the earliest bus into downtown Seattle. Her first task each morning was to restock coffee filters and wipe down the sticky counters that her colleagues had neglected during the night shift. Harvey's diner belonged to a man named Harvey Schmidt, a former line cook who had scratched together enough savings to open his own place. Harvey had a kind heart, but with a business barely scraping by, he couldn't pay his staff more than minimum wage. Still, Linda kept showing up. She had to. Her parents, though supportive, couldn't help her financially. She was on her own, determined to build a life better than the one she'd left behind. Some nights, she'd collapse into bed, exhausted, only to wake up and do it all over again. Meanwhile, her worn-out uniform was perpetually dusted with flour and grease. Her only solace came in the form of small joys, an afternoon break with the co-worker who'd become her closest friend, Julia Maxwell, and the faint trickle of tips Linda stashed in a porcelain jar labeled Escape Fund. On good weeks, she might manage $20 or $30 extra, which she earmarked for a future dream to enroll in a local community college and eventually pursue a career in marketing. Linda had always been good at ideas, spin presentation, how to make the mundane feel extraordinary. She just needed the chance to prove it. One gray winter morning, as the clouds pressed low against the horizon, Linda wrapped her thin coat tighter around herself and hustled into the diner. The bell above the door jingled, and she forced a smile at the near-empty room. Julia, the only other waitress on duty, shot her a sympathetic look. With so few customers, Linda knew her tip jar wouldn't be filling up that day. She put on a brave face, reminding herself of a small victory from the day before she'd saved enough to finally fix the leak in her bathroom sink. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a step toward stability. As she greeted the older couple hunched over their coffee at a corner booth, she couldn't help but glance at the main window, wishing for something. Anything to change. Little did Linda know, a single stranger's arrival was about to throw her predictable life into an unpredictable storm. When he walked through the door, Linda almost missed him. A gust of wind and a flurry of rain battered the glass, and all she saw was his silhouette, a tall figure in a sleek trench coat, hugging a small laptop bag close to his side. Then the neon sign on the diner's window flickered, illuminating the man's face. He brushed rainwater off his dark hair, revealing eyes that seemed to hold a certain quiet, yet magnetic intensity. His movements were smooth and confident, as if he belonged in a world far more sophisticated than the humble booths of Harvey's. "Good morning, Linda," said voice bright with practiced politeness. He gave a slight nod, offering a gentle half-smile that disarmed her. "Morning," he replied. "Is it all right if I sit anywhere?" "Sure, anywhere you like." He chose booth number 5 near the window, though the entire diner was virtually empty. Linda wondered if he liked the view of the street, or if he just wanted space. He removed his coat and placed it neatly beside him. The tailored grey suit beneath and the glint of a pricey watch on his wrist confirmed Linda's suspicion he was definitely out of place in this old diner. She approached with her notepad. "Can I start you off with coffee?" He nodded. "Black coffee, please." Linda scribbled her pen, shaking more than usual. Something about him, the subtle confidence, the warmth in his gaze, made her unsteady. She'd served plenty of well-dressed professionals, before many of them dismissive eyes glued to their phones, never bothering a glance in her direction. But this man looked directly at her, as if seeing through her forced smile and quiet longing. "Sure thing," she managed. "And would you like a menu?" "Please," he said. She handed him one, noticing his neat nails, the gold cufflinks that flickered under the fluorescent lights. She fumbled, nearly dropping the menu. When she returned with his coffee, he thanked her. His voice was low but soft, each word carefully measured. As she retreated behind the counter, Linda couldn't help but find reasons to look back at him. She pretended to wipe down the coffee machine eyes, peeking over her shoulder. He was reading the menu with an air of concentration, as if it held the secrets of the universe. Julia sidled up to Linda, grin wide. "He's gorgeous," she whispered. "You should talk to him more." Linda's cheeks flared. "I barely know him." "Maybe it's about time you get to know someone." Then Julia teased, "This diner is a black hole of missed opportunities." Before Linda could reply, she spotted the man raising his hand, just a small gesture. Quickly she moved to his booth. Her heart fluttered, and she almost tripped on a crack in the floor. He looked up. "I'll have the omelette with spinach and cheddar, and maybe a side of wheat toast." "Of course," Linda said. "Coming right up." She tore the order slip from her notepad, uncertain why her chest felt so tight. Something was stirring, a shift in the air around them, but Linda was still too lost in her everyday grind to imagine what it might mean. The rest of his first visit passed quietly. He ate his meal slowly, savoring each bite as if it were a fine dining experience. Linda tried her best not to stare, but every so often her eyes drifted back. She noticed the thoughtful way he chewed, how he tapped his fingers lightly on the table, as though orchestrating some silent melody. When he asked for the check, she approached with the bill tucked inside a leather folder. Curiosity burned in her mind. Was he from Seattle? Was he just visiting? There were so many questions swirling around that she'd never dare voice aloud. He gave her a small nod of thanks and then slipped a credit card from his wallet. Linda's eyes flickered to the name on it, but he held it just out of sight. Probably just as well, she told herself. Customers and staff always keep a distance. "Thanks for coming in," she said, voice so soft she wondered if he could even hear her. "Thank you for the excellent service. I'll be sure to come back." Her heart soared at the thought. Then he was gone, stepping back into the rainy morning as quietly as he'd entered. A few days later, life at Harvey's returned to its usual humdrum. Cranky businessmen, exhausted single mums, and college students pinching pennies. Linda found herself replaying moments of the stranger's visit, half wishing he might return. Julia teased her about having a secret crush, and Linda would deny it with half-hearted protests. But each time the bell on the door jingled, Linda's eyes darted up a flicker of hope, sparkling until she realized it was just the usual crowd. Then on a particularly stormy Tuesday afternoon, he returned. The bell chimed, and in he strode, carrying the same trench coat and laptop bag. His hair was damp from the downpour, and he seemed to shake off the cold as he slid into the same booth, number 5. She couldn't hold back the grin that spread across her face. She grabbed a mug of fresh coffee and walked over. "Welcome back," she said a little too brightly. He smiled in return. "Thank you. It's good to be back." As she scribbled down his lunch order this time, a grilled chicken sandwich and a cup of tomato soup, she felt bold. Maybe it was Julia's relentless teasing, or her own curiosity about this enigmatic man. She wanted to know more. By the time she dropped off his receipt, her mind was racing. She dared to scribble on the bottom, in her neat, slanted handwriting, "Hope you enjoyed your meal. Thank you for brightening my day." It wasn't exactly a confession of her crush, but it was more forward than anything she'd ever written to a customer. After he paid, she picked up the check folder and opened it discreetly behind the counter. She noticed he'd left a note of his own on a napkin. "Thank you for your kindness. I'm sure you brighten many days." Her cheeks reddened, heart pounding. She folded the note, tucking it safely into her pocket, unaware of just how much chaos such small gestures would eventually unleash. Over the next few weeks, the man became a regular at Harvey's diner. Sometimes he'd arrive in the morning ordering a black coffee and scrambled eggs. Other times he'd come by for a late lunch, sitting quietly as the hustle of the midday crowd passed him by. Each visit, Linda felt a new wave of anticipation, along with a dose of nerves. She learned to brace herself for the moment she'd see that familiar trench coat enter the diner. She still didn't know his name. He signed his credit card slips too quickly, or angled the card so she couldn't read it. But they formed a routine of exchanging friendly banter. Linda found herself opening up bit by bit. She told him about the time she nearly burned down her mother's kitchen, trying to fry donuts at age 10, or how she'd once waited on Bill Gates's personal assistant at a fancy downtown restaurant where she used to work. That little snippet was an odd claim to fame. She never even met Gates himself, just someone on his staff. But in that moment, it felt like a sparkling anecdote to share. The stranger listened intently occasionally, offering a gentle laugh or a question that hinted at genuine interest. His own stories were vague. He traveled frequently for business, spent most of his days in meetings, and had recently decided he needed a change of pace. One day, after handing him a slice of cherry pie, Linda found her heart pounding in her chest. She felt silly, like a schoolgirl nursing a first crush, but there was something about him, something stable, comforting. She wanted to know what lay behind his reserved persona. During one late afternoon lull with only 2 other customers in the diner, Linda mustered the courage to linger at his booth. She picked up his empty plate and hesitated. "You're always coming here alone," she blurted out. "Do you not have colleagues in the area, or—" He gave a thoughtful half-smile. "I do, but they don't share my taste for quiet diners with homemade pies." She laughed. "You make it sound like a gourmet treat." "It is," he assured her. "So what about you, Linda? You've been here a while, I take it?" She nodded. "A little over a year. It's stable. Not exactly what I want to do forever. I have bigger dreams, you know." He glanced at her name tag. "A person with ambition. That's refreshing." Her cheeks burned at the compliment. She wanted to say more, but a rowdy group of teenagers spilled in through the door, snapping her back to reality. Duty called, and the moment was gone. Only later, as she brewed a fresh pot of coffee, did she realize she'd let slip how she had bigger dreams, a truth she rarely dared to speak aloud. But she felt safe with him in a strange way, even though she still didn't know who he really was or the scope of the secrets he carried. Life has a way of reminding dreamers that reality can be harsh. Linda discovered this soon enough when one morning she woke to find her electricity shut off. She rummaged through piles of unopened mail, finding a final notice from the utility company. Her meager paychecks simply hadn't stretched far enough between rent groceries and the occasional splurge for new work shoes. After a frantic call to the power company, she scraped together everything she had in her wallet. But it still wasn't enough. When Linda finally arrived at Harvey's that day, late and frazzled, she felt tears stinging the corners of her eyes. She tried to put on a brave face, but Julia noticed her distress. "What's wrong?" Julia asked quietly by the coffee machine. Linda exhaled, shoulders sagging. "They cut off my power. I can't pay all my bills this month." Julia grimaced. "I'm sorry, Linda. Maybe you can ask Harvey for an advance. I've tried that before." Linda muttered. "He barely has enough to cover payroll. I can't keep living like this." The day felt heavier with each tick of the clock. Linda's manager kept barking about cleaning tasks, and a group of unruly customers complained about their undercooked fries. By mid-afternoon, her nerves were on the brink. When the door's bell rang, she expected another wave of stress. Instead, in walked the man she'd come to think of as her daily solace. He was drenched from a sudden downpour, outside water dripping from his trench coat. Still, he managed a smile when he saw Linda. She tried to return it, but worry must have marred her features because his expression instantly shifted to concern. "You okay?" he asked when she arrived at his booth. Linda forced a nod, but her voice trembled. "I'm fine. Just a tough day." He studied her face quietly, then gave her a warm, understanding look. "I hope things turn around soon." His kindness threatened to shatter her composure, and she quickly jotted down his order. Black coffee-grilled fish, no sides. Her thoughts were a tangled mess. She felt both drawn to him and embarrassed by her situation. If only she had a better job or a chance to do more with her life. Halfway through his meal, Linda was clearing another table nearby when she heard him place a phone call. His tone was hushed, but she caught snippets. "Yes, finalize the acquisition, and we'll meet them in Redwood tomorrow." He sounded like someone with authority, someone used to giving orders that changed people's lives. This wasn't just a traveling salesman or a consultant. This was someone powerful. But Linda brushed off the thought. Maybe she was just imagining things, reading too much into fragments of conversation. Still, she couldn't shake the sense that he was more than he appeared. When he asked for the check, she returned with trembling hands. On a whim, and perhaps fueled by desperation, she scribbled one more line under the total. "If you ever need marketing tips, I'm your girl." It was a silly joke. She had no professional credentials, but a flicker of hope told her maybe, just maybe, this was her stepping stone to a new path. He left a $50 tip that day, far more than usual. Linda's heart soared, but her pride felt bruised. She couldn't help but wonder if he was pitying her. Still, that money helped keep her afloat for another week, and she silently thanked him as she watched him leave his silhouette, vanishing into the rain once again. At closing time, Linda sat on a bar stool near the register, carefully counting her tips for the day. The $50 bill from the mysterious customer stood out like a beacon. Julia sidled up, arms crossed, a knowing look in her eyes. "So, are you two a thing now?" Julia asked, half joking, half serious. Linda rolled her eyes. "He's just a generous tipper. There's nothing else going on." Julia hopped onto the adjacent stool, her curly hair bouncing. "Look, I've seen the way you look at him and the way he looks at you. It's like you're both trying to say something, but you don't have the guts." Linda's cheeks reddened. "You're imagining things. Am I? Or is something blossoming that you're too scared to admit?" Linda flicked the corner of the $50 tip. "He's clearly someone important. We come from different worlds. Even if I were interested, there's no point." Julia sighed, patting Linda's back. "Just don't lock yourself out of happiness, because you're afraid." Linda finished counting, said goodnight, and trudged outside into the cold. On the bus ride home, she thought about the swirling contradictions in her life, a daily grind that left her exhausted, and this sudden spark of possibilities whenever he was near. But fate had another curveball in store. The next day when Linda arrived at the diner, Harvey pulled her aside. "We might have to close on weekends for a while," he said. Sorrow etched into his voice. "Business is slow and I can't afford to keep the place running full hours." Linda felt her stomach plummet. "But that means fewer shifts." "I know," Harvey said apologetically. "I'm sorry, kid. If things don't pick up soon, I might have to let some people go." With that grim warning echoing in her ears, Linda tried to focus on her duties. She needed this job as meager as it was. The tips from that mysterious customer were a godsend, but they couldn't fix the overarching problem. Later, while wiping down menus, Linda overheard her manager grumbling to a co-worker about a new high-end cafe opening down the street, cutting into their foot traffic. The sense of impending doom tugged at Linda's already frayed nerves. When the man arrived that afternoon, this time wearing a sharp navy suit, Linda felt a wave of relief. She welcomed him with a smile, but behind it lurked sadness. He immediately noticed. "You look worried," he said softly as she poured his coffee. Linda forced a light laugh. "It's just been a hard week." He seemed about to say something else, but the buzz of his phone interrupted. She noticed the name Russell Friedman flash on the screen, someone Linda vaguely recognized from news articles. Russell Friedman was a venture capitalist known in the Seattle tech scene for backing major startups. Could her mysterious customer be involved in something that big? Her curiosity flared again. Who was this man? Yet she remained silent, placing the sugar packet on his table before hurrying away to tend to another customer. All the while her thoughts raced. If he was connected to prominent investors like Friedman was, he perhaps a CEO himself. Someone with a net worth, unimaginable to someone like her. The possibility made her pulse quicken. She clutched the order pad tight, trying to steady herself. She had no idea how drastically her life would soon change. Days later, Linda's finances took another downward spiral. Rent was overdue, the electricity bill still hovered menacingly, and Harvey had just cut her weekend shifts. The entire week felt like an endless storm in her mind. She needed a miracle, or at least some kind of lifeline. After closing one evening, she stayed behind to help the dishwasher Marco clean up. Julia had already left. The diner was ghostly quiet, only the humming fluorescent lights and the distant rumble of traffic for company. As Linda scrubbed the last plate, she felt a surge of frustration. She wanted more out of life than just scraping by. She pictured the man who came in almost daily now, always tipping well. always so calm and composed. She found herself longing for his presence, even just his quiet reassurance. The next day, as if summoned by her thoughts, he arrived for an early lunch. The diner was nearly empty. Linda gave him her usual bright smile, but felt the tension rising in her chest. This time they chatted a bit more openly. She admitted she'd been having a rough go of it, though she kept the worst details to herself. He listened attentively, but again didn't offer much about himself. Just small glimpses of a busy schedule, a major deal he was finalizing, and a big trip soon. When he finished his meal, Linda handed him the check. She hesitated. Her pulse thrummed in her ears. With a shaky breath, she grabbed a pen and scribbled a note on the bottom. "I look forward to seeing you every day. You bring light to my dull world. I guess I have a bit of a crush on you." Time seemed to stand still as she placed the bill face down on the table. The pen nearly slipped from her fingers. Had she really just confessed that? She tried not to panic as she turned and scurried behind the counter. Heart hammering, Linda pretended to straighten sugar packets. She peeked occasionally, seeing him read her words. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. Then slowly, a soft smile spread across his lips. He pulled out a silver pen from his inside pocket. When she finally mustered the courage to collect the slip, she found he'd written back in tidy, precise script. "I'm flattered, Linda. And I'd love to talk more, but timing is tricky. I'm not who you think I am." Below his message, he left a phone number. Linda stared, her hands shaking. Her mind swirled with questions. What did he mean? Why would timing be tricky? Not who she thought he was. She also noticed he'd tipped $100 this time. The sight made her mouth go dry. This was no ordinary man, that much was certain. Trying to keep her composure, Linda watched him walk out the door, his laptop bag slung over his shoulder. The moment he left, she scurried to show Julia the slip, excitement and apprehension warring inside her. Little did she know her confession would set in motion a chain of events more dramatic than any romance novel she'd devoured on her lunch breaks. That evening, Linda paced the length of her dingy apartment, the man's phone number burning a hole in her pocket. She rehearsed a dozen different opening lines, but each attempt felt clumsy. Hours later, her nerves still in knots, she finally tapped the number into her phone. It rang once, twice. She almost hung up. Then a familiar voice answered. "Hello." Her breath caught. Hi. This is Linda." A pause. "Linda Park." She managed a shaky laugh. "Yes." His voice softened. "I'm glad you called." They fell into an easy conversation about their days, the weather, and eventually Linda found the courage to ask, "So, what did you mean by not who I think you are?" A weighted silence followed. "I'm not sure how to explain," he said carefully. "But I run a technology firm. I've been in Seattle finalizing a significant deal. My schedule is chaotic. He paused as though searching for the right words. "I just didn't want you to think I was a simple office worker." Linda's mouth dried. Her mind buzzed with revelations. He confirmed he was indeed a CEO of a company called Optima Sin, and that he'd built his career from the ground up. Linda vaguely recalled hearing about a local CEO whose startup soared after partnering with major investors, including the famed Russell Friedman. This must be him. The conversation was both exhilarating and terrifying. She felt an odd mix of excitement. She had a crush on a self-made millionaire CEO and a pang of insecurity. How could she ever fit into his world? Nevertheless, he asked if they could meet sometime outside the diner. Maybe coffee, maybe dinner. Linda's heart practically exploded with joy. She said yes, and they agreed on a casual lunch at a nearby cafe the following Saturday. When she ended the call, she squealed so loudly that her neighbor banged on the wall for quiet. But amid her excitement, doubts crept in. She had bills to pay, an uncertain job future, and hardly any nice clothes to wear. She felt out of her league. She confided in Julia the next day, who squealed with delight and told Linda she'd help her pick an outfit. "Don't sabotage this," Julia urged. "He clearly sees something special in you." Linda nodded, swallowing her fears. She might never get another chance to escape the confines of her struggling life. But she also worried about what would happen if his interest was just fleeting. Or worse, if he discovered how dire her financial situation really was and decided she was just a charity case. Still, hope warred with anxiety. Saturday loomed like a promise and a threat. If everything went right, it could be the start of something magical. If everything went wrong, she risked losing not just a potential romance, but the thread of hope that kept her afloat every day in that diner. Saturday arrived, grey clouds gathering overhead, as if threatening to sabotage Linda's day. She and Julia had scoured thrift stores earlier in the week, finding a simple yet flattering navy blouse to pair with her best black jeans. Linda tied her hair back in a loose bun, praying the drizzle wouldn't wreck it before she arrived at the cafe. She arrived early, nerves jangling. The Cafe Mariposa Brew was a cozy spot known for organic teas and artisanal pastries. Linda picked a small table by the window. She tried to calm herself by examining the pastries, but her stomach flip-flopped too much to even consider eating. Then he walked in. No suit today. He wore a casual grey sweater, dark jeans, and looked approachable. He gave her a warm smile, and Linda felt a surge of relief. "You look beautiful," he said softly, bending to give her a small, polite hug. Her cheeks warmed. "You look good, too, I realize I still don't know your name." He froze, then let out a sheepish chuckle. "I suppose I never officially introduced myself, did I?" "It's Daniel." "Daniel Reed." Linda repeated it in her mind, Daniel Reed. It felt surreal to say it out loud. They ordered tea and pastries, then settled into a comfortable chat. Daniel asked about Linda's family, her childhood in Tacoma, her hopes for the future. She spoke candidly about wanting to study marketing, about how she had a creative streak she longed to pursue. In turn, Daniel shared his early struggles, growing up in a small town, working odd jobs, while learning coding at night, eventually creating a niche software that took off. Now, he was the founder and CEO of Optimusyn, a multi-million-dollar tech company rumored to be eyeing an IPO soon. He downplayed his success, but Linda saw the spark in his eyes when he talked about his work. Just as the conversation turned toward lighter topics, a bit of teasing about who had the worst high school experience, a tall, impeccably dressed woman marched up to their table. Her eyes flicked over Linda dismissively before she turned to Daniel. "There you are," the woman snapped, voice dripping with annoyance. "I've been trying to reach you for days." Daniel's face tightened. "Nicole, I told you I'd be off the grid this weekend." Nicole shot Linda a look that made her feel invisible. "We need to finalize the Redwood deal. Investors are circling. You can't keep ignoring your responsibilities." Hot embarrassment rose in Linda's cheeks. Who was this woman? A business partner? A girlfriend? She suddenly felt like she'd crashed a meeting she had no right attending. Daniel stood, jaw clenched. "Nicole, this is Linda. We were in the middle of a private conversation." Nicole offered a frosty smile. Pleased to meet you, Linda. I'm Nicole Adams, CFO of Optimusin. Sorry to interrupt your date, but Daniel has obligations. Linda shrank in her seat. Tension crackled between them. Daniel apologized to Linda, promising he'd call her, then pulled Nicole aside to speak in hushed tones. Linda watched from afar, feeling pangs of inadequacy. This was his world, a whirlwind of big deals and high-stakes negotiations. He returned apologetic. I have to go. I'm so sorry. I'll make this up to you. Linda forced a bright smile. It's okay. I understand. But doubt churned in her gut. As she watched him leave with Nicole, her heart sank. She couldn't help but wonder, could a waitress with overdue bills and a shaky future ever really fit into the life of a millionaire CEO? The days that followed were a blur of uncertainty. Daniel texted Linda a few times, apologizing profusely for the abrupt exit and insisting he wanted to see her again. She responded politely, but the buzz of excitement had dulled, replaced by a gnawing sense of realism. Meanwhile, the diner's struggles continued. Harvey announced staff hours would be cut again. There just weren't enough customers to keep everyone on. Linda's meager pay plummeted further, forcing her to make impossible choices: rent or groceries, bus fare or phone bill. One late afternoon, Linda finished her shift, shoulders heavy with fatigue and worry. Just as she was about to lock up, a sleek black sedan pulled up outside. Her heart leapt as Daniel stepped out, ignoring the drizzle that stained his immaculate shirt. He rushed inside, looking uncharacteristically flustered. Linda, can we talk? She nodded, leading him to a booth. Harvey pretended not to notice, giving them space. I'm sorry. Daniel began, raking a hand through his hair. Nicole's timing was terrible. We're in the midst of closing a major acquisition in Redwood, and she's on edge. Linda eyed him carefully. It's okay. I get it. You have a lot on your plate. Daniel shook his head. It's not okay. I want to make time for you, but I feel like my world is chaos, and I'm dragging you into it. She pressed her lips together, a swirl of emotions overwhelming her. She longed to be part of his world, even if it was chaotic. But she also felt the weight of her own problems, ones that seemed trivial in comparison to million-dollar deals. Daniel, she said softly, I appreciate that you've been honest. I'm not sure what you expect from me. I'm worried about my job, my bills. She trailed off, swallowing hard. You're this successful CEO, and I'm... He reached across the table and took her hand. You're talented, smart, and kind. That's worth more than any job title. A flutter of hope danced in her chest. But then he sighed, glancing at his phone. I want us to see where this goes. I really do. But the Redwood deal is coming to a head. We have a board meeting next week in San Francisco. After that, everything might change. His eyes clouded with worry she'd never seen from him before. Linda tried to reassure him with a smile. Let's just take it one day at a time. No pressure. Daniel nodded relief, flooding his expression. He squeezed her hand before letting go. Thank you. Maybe once this is over, things will calm down. I can show you my world if you'd like. Despite her reservations, Linda's heart soared. She walked Daniel back to the door, ignoring the curious stares from Julia and the kitchen staff. As he drove away, Linda leaned against the glass door, wondering if she was heading toward a fairy tale ending or a heartbreak she'd never forget. A week later, Daniel vanished from the diner scene. No texts, no calls. Linda tried to be patient. He'd mentioned the board meeting the Redwood deal, but doubt gnawed at her. Julia urged her to stay positive, but Linda couldn't stop her mind from envisioning the worst. Maybe Nicole had convinced him that dating a waitress was bad, or maybe he'd simply moved on. At the diner, things reached a breaking point. Harvey took Linda aside one afternoon and explained that with the new cafe siphoning customers, he could no longer afford to keep multiple waitresses on staff. He was letting Linda go. "I'm so sorry," Harvey said, eyes filled with genuine regret. "I wish I had better news." Linda felt her world tilt. All the times she'd pictured leaving Harvey's were on her own terms, walking away with a proud stride and a new job. Instead, she was being cast out. She left the diner that day, fighting back tears. Without that income, however small, she wouldn't make rent. She trudged to the bus stop, numb the Seattle rain, soaking through her thin jacket. At home, she found a single text from Daniel Need to stay in SF longer. "Crazy times. We'll explain soon." No comforting words, no sign of missing her. She felt the sting of rejection. Maybe this was the harsh wake-up call. She needed time to face reality alone. The next day, Linda started scouring online job boards, applying to anything receptionists call centers, even data entry. She tried not to feel ashamed. Everyone starts somewhere. That evening, as she was preparing to heat up a can of soup for dinner, her phone buzzed. It was Daniel. She answered, voice shaky. "Hello," he sounded exhausted. "Linda, I'm sorry I've been out of touch. The Redwood deal is more complicated than I anticipated. There's a faction on the board that's pushing back, and I might lose control of the company I founded." Linda closed her eyes, absorbing his words. "I'm sorry. That sounds awful." He let out a bitter laugh. "It's not just about me. Hundreds of jobs are on the line. I've got to negotiate carefully, or the investors might bring in a new CEO." Her heart clenched at how stressed he sounded, but she also felt her own rising panic about losing her job. She hesitated before confessing, I got laid off from the diner." Daniel fell silent. "Oh, Linda, that's terrible. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" She tried to keep her voice even. "I know you're dealing with so much. I didn't want to bother you." Emotion swelled in his voice. "You're not a bother. You matter to me." A tear slipped down Linda's cheek. It was the comfort she craved. But what now? They were both facing uncertain futures, albeit in wildly different leagues. Could two people from opposite ends of the financial spectrum find a common thread in the chaos they promised to meet once he returned to Seattle? No matter what happened, Linda whispered a silent vow to face her troubles head-on. She was done waiting for fate to save her. A few days later, Linda was home, slouched in front of her laptop, rewriting her resume for the umpteenth time. She'd even considered booking a marketing internship, though the pay was often laughable, if it existed at all. Her phone pinged. "Daniel. I'm flying back tomorrow. Can we meet?" A swirl of hope and apprehension coursed through her. She typed back a quick yes, and they agreed to meet at her apartment, an intimate setting that made her palms sweat. The next day, Daniel arrived in a taxi. He looked worn down, dark circles under his eyes, yet he managed a genuine smile when Linda opened the door. Her studio apartment was small and cluttered, but she'd done her best to straighten up, lighting a vanilla-scented candle to mask the stale odor of desperation. Daniel sat on her modest couch, noticing the cardboard boxes filled with personal items. "Are you moving?" She shook her head. "No, just reorganizing. trying to see what I can sell. I'm not sure how I'll pay next month's rent." He reached out to take her hand. "I'm so sorry." She shrugged, forcing a tight smile. "It is what it is." They talked about the Redwood deal. Daniel explained that a group of investors led by none other than Russell Friedman was pushing for an immediate expansion. Daniel, however, felt it was too risky. The standoff had escalated. "If I can't sway the board, they'll bring in a new CEO," Daniel said, voice trembling with anger. "I might lose control of the company I built from nothing." A wave of empathy swept over Linda. He was fighting for his company, just as she was fighting for her livelihood. Their struggles mirrored each other in unexpected ways, despite the difference in scale. In that moment, Linda had a flash of inspiration. What if you prepare a detailed marketing pitch to show the investors your vision? Make it so compelling, they can't refuse. Daniel blinked. "I've got a team for that. But their approach hasn't been, well, let's just say it lacks heart." Linda's own pulse quickened. "Let me help. It's my dream to do marketing. I might not have a degree, but I've studied on my own. I could try to craft something with you." He looked uncertain, but a spark lit in his eyes. "All right. Let's see what you've got." They spent the next few hours brainstorming. Linda jotted notes about brand messaging, social responsibility angles, and how to connect emotionally with both clients and the public. Daniel marveled at her intuitive grasp of marketing psychology, how she painted pictures with words. By the time they wrapped up, the room was littered with post-it notes. Exhausted but excited, Daniel smiled at Linda in awe. "You're truly gifted." Warmth flooded her. It felt like a moment of triumph. For the first time in weeks, both of them felt a renewed sense of hope. Hand in hand, they stood gazing at each other, with a mixture of relief and something deeper, something like love, blossoming in the midst of chaos. A week later, Linda found herself stepping into a world she'd only ever glimpsed on TV or in glossy magazines. Daniel had insisted she come with him to the critical board meeting at Optimus Inn headquarters. He said her input was crucial to the presentation, though Linda suspected he also wanted her moral support. She wore the best business outfit she could piece together. From thrift store finds, a sleek black skirt and a crisp white blouse. Her nerves threatened to consume her as she rode the elevator up to the 35th floor, with Daniel by her side. He gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. Inside the gleaming conference room, polished executives in tailored suits lined a mahogany table. At the head sat Russell Friedman, silver-haired with sharp, calculating eyes. Nicole Adams, the CFO, looked as poised and cool as ever, barely acknowledging Linda's presence. Daniel began the meeting with a calm yet confident tone, outlining his vision for the Redwood acquisition. Then he introduced Linda as a consultant who had helped refine their marketing approach. Gasps and raised eyebrows rippled through the room. Linda's heart thundered. Her voice quivered slightly as she began, but she pressed on. She spoke of brand authenticity, of forging an emotional connection with customers, and how Redwood's eco-friendly approach could mesh perfectly with Optimus Inn's sustainability goals. She'd woven in real-life stories, employees' successes, community impact. Surprisingly, the board members leaned forward, intrigued. Even Friedman's harsh gaze softened as Linda painted a hopeful vision, one that relied less on aggressive expansion and more on nurturing existing strengths. After Linda finished, Daniel showed a few slides detailing the financial projections. With Linda's help, they'd framed Redwood as a long-term partnership rather than a risky takeover. The synergy was clear, and the board was visibly impressed. Nicole, however, remained stoic. She pointed out potential pitfalls, highlighting that the Redwood acquisition might still require significant capital. But the mood in the room was shifting in Daniel's favor. Finally, Friedman spoke, his voice measured. "Daniel, your approach is compelling, and I have to say this marketing angle is fresh. However, the board needs assurance that your leadership can handle the possible risks." Daniel swallowed, glancing at Linda. She offered a reassuring nod. He straightened his shoulders. "I built this company from the ground up. I've always balanced innovation with caution. With Redwood, we are investing in a growing market. We can't let fear stifle opportunity." A tense silence filled the room. Friedman glanced around at the other board members, who were quietly nodding, exchanging murmurs of approval. Finally, Friedman leaned back, tapping a pen against the table. "All right," he said. "We'll move forward with your plan under one condition." Daniel tensed. Yes, Friedman's gaze flicked to Linda. "Your consultant continues to refine the marketing strategy with you." Linda's cheeks burned, but Daniel beamed. "Absolutely," he said, relief washing over him. In that instant, it felt like they'd won a monumental victory. But as Linda glanced at Nicole's icy glare, she sensed there might still be battles to fight. News of the successful board meeting spread rapidly through Optimus Inn's corridors. Employees whispered about the mystery consultant who'd saved the Redwood deal. Some eyed Linda curiously, others with open admiration. Amid the congratulatory atmosphere, Daniel and Linda found a moment alone in his office, a sleek, modern space overlooking the Seattle skyline. He pulled her into a grateful hug. "I can't thank you enough," he whispered. "You saved this company." She laughed, still breathless from the overwhelming morning. "Don't be silly. You did the work. I just offered a perspective." He held her gaze with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. "You're incredible, Linda." For a moment they simply savored the victory. Then Daniel cleared his throat. "Now that we've settled the Redwood deal, we can move forward. I'll make sure we formalize your role. A paid position, obviously." Linda blinked. "A paid position at Optimus Inn." His lips curved into a smile. "You're talented, and I'd be a fool not to hire you." Her heart soared at the idea, but her stomach twisted. She was an unemployed waitress just a few days ago, with no formal marketing degree. Would the rest of the company accept her? Before she could respond, Nicole Adams swept in her heels, clacking on the polished floor. Her polite smile was thin. "Congratulations," Nicole said, her tone neutral. "Russell Friedman is happy with the meeting. But we have a new challenge." She extended a tablet to Daniel, showing a set of financial projections. "We're getting pushback from Redwood's shareholders. They want to ensure we honor their commitment to fair labor practices. It's going to require more capital up front than we anticipated." Daniel studied the numbers, his jaw tightening. "We can accommodate it if we adjust the timeline." Nicole flicked a glance at Linda. "Yes, but Friedman is also pressing for a quick turnaround. If we don't deliver, we risk losing investor confidence." Tension bristled in the room. Linda could see the frustration in Daniel's eyes. They'd just cleared one hurdle, only to face another. But she mustered her courage and spoke up. "If Redwood's shareholders value fair labor, we should emphasize that in our marketing. Turn it from an obstacle into a highlight. Show the world we prioritize ethical standards too." Nicole shot her a look that might have frozen lava, but Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, that's a great angle. We can incorporate that into our brand messaging. Nicole, let's gather the finance team and see how we can rearrange budgets. Nicole's posture stiffened. She offered a curt nod and left, leaving behind an air thick with unspoken tension. Daniel exhaled, rubbing his forehead. She's not a fan of risk, and she's definitely wary of you. Linda forced a small smile. I noticed. Still a spark of determination lit in her. She was no stranger to challenges. If this was the price of stepping into Daniel's world and forging her own dream, she was willing to pay it. With each passing day, Linda dove deeper into her new marketing responsibilities at Optima Sin. She was only a temporary contractor for now, but the exposure was exhilarating. She worked alongside Daniel's team, drafting proposals, refining pitches, and brainstorming strategies to ensure Redwood's ethical stance became Optima Sin's shining hallmark. Her life changed drastically. Instead of rising at dawn to serve coffee, she now commuted to a high-rise office. She traded her grease-stained apron for business attire she purchased bit by bit with her new paychecks. It wasn't lavish, but it was enough to help with rent, groceries, and even the overdue electricity bill. Despite the improvements, anxiety still gnawed at Linda. As she walked the halls, she caught snide remarks from a few employees who resented her rapid ascent. Word had spread that she was a former waitress with no formal degree. Some whispered that she was merely Daniel's pet project, or worse, his fling. The rumors stung, and Linda tried to keep her head high. Daniel sensed her turmoil and assured her that her work spoke for itself. Yet one evening, when they finally had a moment alone, she confessed her fears. I feel like I don't belong here, she murmured, staring out the window of Daniel's penthouse apartment. He'd invited her over for a homemade dinner, though homemade meant catered dishes in nice warmers. Daniel wrapped an arm around her waist. I've never met anyone more deserving of a place here. You're brilliant, Linda. She looked up at him, tears threatening to spill. People talk. They say I'm just a nobody, that you only brought me in because we're... He hushed her, gently brushing a thumb across her cheek. Let them talk. As long as I'm CEO, you have a spot here. And if the Redwood deal cements my leadership, we'll prove them all wrong. Linda smiled through the tears. He pulled her into a tender kiss, and for a moment the rest of the world vanished. But life rarely stops for romantic interludes. As the Redwood integration moved forward, tensions flared. Nicole grew increasingly impatient with budget constraints. Friedman demanded weekly progress updates, and Redwood's shareholders insisted on stringent audits. Daniel was under immense pressure, and Linda felt it too. Their once blissful escapades, late-night phone calls, sweet texts turned into quick exchanges about deadlines and deliverables. Daniel sometimes worked until 2 a.m. Linda would find him asleep at his desk, papers strewn everywhere, phone buzzing non-stop. Their personal connection suffered. When they did manage a short evening together, exhaustion weighed heavily. Their romantic spark dimmed behind a haze of stress. One night, Linda arrived at Daniel's place, hoping for a cozy dinner. Instead, she found him locked in a heated phone call with Friedman, slamming a fist on the table. Nicole was there too, arms folded, glaring at Linda, as if she were an intruder. That night, Linda left without so much as a hug. She realized that love, even a deep one, might buckle under the weight of corporate warfare and personal insecurities. She wondered if this was the beginning of the end, or if they still had the strength to fight for what they had built together. By the time the Redwood acquisition was set to launch publicly, Daniel was a man on the edge. Meetings upon meetings, urgent calls, press statements, it all piled up. Linda, too, juggled a mountain of tasks, trying to finalize the marketing campaign and coordinate with Redwood's team. One evening, a critical conflict arose. Redwood insisted on a separate press event, highlighting their ethical labor practices, while Friedman wanted a unified statement focusing on Optima Sin's broader vision. Linda and Daniel proposed a balanced approach, but Friedman accused them of diluting the company's brand, whereas Redwood threatened to walk if their mission was overshadowed. Torn between two powerful groups, Daniel sank into despair. Nicole fanned the flames by pointing out the financial repercussions of each decision. "If Redwood pulls out now, we'll be in breach of contract," she snapped at Daniel during a heated conference call with Friedman and Redwood reps on the line. Friedman was equally adamant. "Compromise is fine, Daniel, but we can't look weak in front of the market." Linda tried to mediate, her voice cracking. "What if we run 2 concurrent campaigns? One focusing on Redwood's labor ethics, the other on Optima Sin's broader synergy." Friedman cut her off. "That's double the work and double the cost. Are you sure you have the bandwidth, Ms. Park?" His tone dripped condescension, and Linda's cheeks burned. Daniel leapt to her defense, praising her dedication and innovative ideas. Friedman relented, and Redwood's representatives agreed to reconsider if they saw a tangible plan by Monday. After the call ended, Daniel collapsed into his chair, head in his hands. "I'm so tired of all this." Linda knelt beside him. "We'll figure it out." He looked at her eyes brimming with frustration and something like defeat. "I wish I could run away from all this. Just you and me." The raw vulnerability in his voice nearly broke her. She took his hand. "It's almost over. Once the deal is finalized, maybe things will settle." But deep down, Linda wasn't sure. The deal's success hinged on pleasing too many stakeholders with conflicting interests. She feared the pressure might crush Daniel or tear them apart. That night, Linda left the office late. Daniel insisted on staying to draft the new plan. She offered to stay, but he gently urged her to go home and rest. "You've done enough," he said softly, tracing a hand over her cheek. She rode the elevator down alone, staring at her reflection in the metal doors. Was this her life now? Once a waitress fighting for scraps, now a marketing consultant in a high-stakes corporate drama. She felt like an imposter clinging to the remnants of a relationship that might not survive. As she stepped outside into the chilly Seattle air, her phone buzzed with a single text from Daniel. "Thank you for believing in me." A tear slipped down her cheek. She texted back, "Always." And she meant it, though she sensed they were barreling toward a tipping point that would either forge them closer together or shatter them irrevocably. Monday dawned bleak and cold. Linda arrived early to the office to finalize the dual campaign approach. She worked tirelessly through the morning, coordinating with Redwood's marketing team to highlight their labor initiatives and simultaneously crafting Optima Sin's broader synergy message. By noon, Daniel joined her dark circles under his eyes. Nicole hovered stone-faced, checking cost projections. Friedman called in from New York, his voice crackling through the speakerphone. The Redwood reps scrutinized every detail, occasionally volleying questions or raising concerns. After hours of back and forth, Friedman stunned everyone by voicing his approval. "I think this could work," he said, his tone grudgingly respectful. Redwood's reps likewise expressed cautious optimism. Cheers and applause erupted in the conference room. Some staff members shook hands, and Linda felt Daniel's arms wrap around her in a spontaneous hug. She laughed, tears of relief springing to her eyes. They'd done it, found a fragile middle ground that might just hold. But amidst the celebration, Nicole gestured for Daniel to follow her into an adjacent room. Linda watched them disappear, her stomach twisting. Was another crisis looming? She busied herself cleaning up documents until Daniel returned, face unreadable. He took Linda by the hand and led her to his office. Closing the door, he spoke softly. "Nicole wants to address the rumors about us." Linda's heart clenched. "Rumors?" He nodded, jaw tight. "Some staff are complaining that that your position isn't legitimate. They're saying I showed favoritism by hiring you." A wave of hurt and indignation washed over Linda. "But my work speaks for itself." Daniel cupped her face gently. "I know. You've proven your worth 100 times over. But Nicole thinks it might be wise if we step back publicly. At least until the Redwood deal is fully signed." A lump formed in Linda's throat. "You mean pretend we're not?" He nodded miserably. "Just until everything is settled. If Friedman or Redwood gets wind of internal friction, it could give them leverage. If the staff thinks I'm mixing business and pleasure, it could undermine our credibility." Tears threatened, but Linda blinked them away. She understood the political necessity, but it hurt. She'd come so far, only to be told she had to hide her feelings. "Okay," she whispered, "if that's what's best for the company. And for you." Daniel pulled her into a tight embrace, resting his chin on her head. "I'm sorry. I hate doing this. But once the deal is sealed, no one can tear us apart." She clung to that promise, though a voice in her head worried it might never be so simple. Love often demands sacrifice, and Linda was willing to give it if it meant a real future with the man who'd changed her life. Still, as she parted from Daniel's embrace, she wondered whether all these compromises would eventually erode the foundation of what they'd built. Could love truly thrive in the shadows? After another intense week of negotiations, the Redwood acquisition was finally signed. The entire company buzzed with excitement. Media outlets hailed it as a remarkable partnership that promised ethical and innovative growth. Friedman, in a rare display of magnanimity, released a statement praising Daniel's leadership. Nicole dutifully compiled financial reports showing an uptick in investor confidence. For Linda, the completion of the deal brought a whirlwind of mixed emotions. On one hand, she felt immense pride. She'd contributed to something monumental using her marketing instincts in a way she once only dreamed of. On the other, she and Daniel remained distant in the office, barely exchanging more than professional pleasantries. The facade weighed heavily on her. But on the evening the deal closed, Daniel asked her to meet him at a private venue, a small, elegant rooftop garden in downtown Seattle. Linda arrived heart-fluttering. Soft lights twinkled along the garden's railings, and the city's skyline stretched out in a breathtaking panorama. Daniel stood near a table set with champagne flutes and a simple bouquet of wildflowers. He looked more relaxed than he had in weeks, a tender smile lighting his features. She approached, nerves buzzing. "It's beautiful here." He took her hands in his. "You deserve beautiful things, Linda." A soft breeze ruffled her hair, and she noticed a handful of white petals floating in the air, a touch of magic in the urban night. Daniel handed her a glass of champagne, and they clinked glasses in quiet celebration. "To Redwood," Linda said with a grin. To us, Daniel replied, a new light in his eyes. They sipped the champagne, the tension between them melting away. He set his glass down and gently pulled her closer. "I can't keep us a secret anymore," he whispered. "The deal's done. I want the world to know how much you mean to me." Linda's eyes stung with tears. She'd waited so long for him to say those words. He leaned in, and they shared a slow, loving kiss under the city lights. When they finally pulled apart, Linda laughed through her tears. So, no more hiding. Daniel shook his head, determination written on his face. No more hiding. You're not just a waitress or my consultant. You're the woman I... He paused, emotion stealing his breath. The woman I love. Linda's heart nearly burst. She'd been so consumed by corporate chaos that she hadn't dared to hope for such a declaration. But now, under the stars, he said it with absolute clarity. I love you too, she whispered, tears slipping freely now. They stood there wrapped in each other's arms, the city pulsing around them. It felt like a triumph far greater than any business victory. In that moment, Linda believed that love could conquer the greatest odds, diner uniforms and boardroom suits be damned. The following day, Daniel made good on his promise. At an informal company gathering to celebrate the Redwood deal, he introduced Linda, not just as a consultant, but as his partner. A wave of shocked silence swept the room before erupting into cautious applause. Some colleagues looked surprised, others simply accepting. Friedman offered a nod of approval, and Redwood's representatives even congratulated them. Nicole, however, remained distant, her expression unreadable. Later, she pulled Linda aside, arms folded. I hope you know what you're doing, she said coldly. Linda met her stare. I believe in Daniel's vision, and I believe in him. Nicole's lips pressed into a thin line. Then I hope for everyone's sake that your personal relationship doesn't compromise the company. The warning stung, but Linda chose not to engage in further confrontation. She was determined to prove herself through her work. In the weeks that followed, Linda integrated more fully into Optima Sin's marketing department, quickly becoming an indispensable team member. She took a few online classes in the evenings to bolster her formal knowledge. Daniel insisted on covering the tuition, but Linda refused. I'll handle it, she said, determined to stand on her own 2 feet. Their relationship blossomed in the open. They stole quick lunches at nearby cafes, hand in hand. Sometimes Daniel would stop by Linda's desk with a coffee just to say hello. Outside of work, they explored the city attending art exhibits, strolling through parks, and even volunteering at a local community center. Linda's confidence soared. She finally moved out of her dingy studio into a slightly larger apartment, one she could afford with her new salary. Her parents visited overwhelmed and proud of their daughter's transformation. Julia, too, celebrated Linda's success, though she'd remained at Harvey's. One day, I'll find my own big break, Julia joked, hugging Linda goodbye after a weekend visit. Yet amid the newfound joy, Linda never forgot the struggle that led her here. She still remembered the ache of standing by the diner window, waiting for a customer who might leave a decent tip. She remained grateful for every opportunity that came her way. One chilly evening, as she and Daniel stood on her apartment balcony, overlooking the city lights, he asked her softly, "Do you ever miss the diner?" Linda thought of the worn vinyl booths, the clatter of dishes, the smell of cheap coffee. She smiled sadly. Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it. But I don't miss the struggle. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. I'm glad you're here with me, building a future. I need you by my side. They stood there gazing at the stars. The Redwood deal had catalyzed not just the company's growth, but Linda's personal evolution too. She was no longer the shy waitress, scribbling confessions on receipts. She was Linda Park, a marketing professional with a bright future and a deep, abiding love she'd never thought possible. Months passed, and Optimasin thrived under Daniel's leadership. The Redwood partnership flourished, celebrated by industry insiders as a model of ethical collaboration. Linda's marketing campaigns garnered praise for their authentic storytelling, and she soon found herself managing a small team. Rumors of Optimasin going public resurfaced, and Friedman was back in the picture, encouraging a strategic IPO launch. Nicole, though still cautious around Linda, couldn't deny her contributions. Gradually, an uneasy respect formed between them. One brisk autumn afternoon, Daniel invited Linda to a fancy charity gala. She fretted over what to wear, feeling a pang of insecurity. But Daniel reassured her. "Just be yourself," he said, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. At the gala, Linda felt eyes on her. Some from society elites who recognized Daniel. But she held her head high. After all, her journey from a struggling waitress to a respected marketing strategist was something to be proud of. Later that night, in the privacy of their car, Daniel took Linda's hand. "There's something I want to ask you." Linda's heart fluttered. His gaze was serious, affectionate. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Time seemed to slow as he flipped it open, revealing a delicate ring with a single sparkling diamond. "Linda Park," he said, voice trembling slightly. "I fell in love with you over coffee cups and scribbled notes on diner receipts. You've transformed my life in ways I never imagined. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred Linda's vision. She thought of all the nights she'd scraped by on pennies of the humiliations and the heartbreak, and of how her life had changed in the most extraordinary way. "Yes," she whispered, her throat tight with emotion. 1,000 times, yes. In the hush of that moment, with the city lights twinkling outside the car window, Linda's old world and new world converged. The poor waitress, who had once dared to confess a crush on a mysterious customer, was now engaged to a millionaire CEO, and she was no longer just living a fairy tale. She had earned her place by his side, building a bridge between their two very different lives. They sealed their promise with a kiss, tears of joy mingling with laughter. Their story, born in the cramped booths of Harvey's diner, had come full circle. Yet in many ways it was just beginning. For Linda, the moral was clear. Love is a powerful force, capable of cutting through class divides and personal insecurities. But it wasn't fate alone that brought them together. It was her own courage, resilience, and willingness to fight for her dream. And as Daniel held her close, she realized that sometimes the greatest fortunes in life aren't just about wealth, but about finding that one person who believes in you, no matter where you come from. And so, dear viewer, concludes the remarkable tale of Linda Park, the courageous waitress who dared to write her heartfelt confession on a receipt forever changing the course of her life. From the cramped booths of Harvey's diner to the sleek boardrooms of Optimasin, she proved that love knows no boundaries, and that true ambition can unlock doors you never imagined. If you've been moved by Linda's journey, her struggles, her triumphs, and the beautiful bond she forged with Daniel, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. By supporting this video, you'll help spread a message of hope and perseverance to others who might be one bold step away from their own life-changing opportunity. Thank you for joining us. And remember, a single act of courage can spark a lifetime of possibility.